The Eagles making one big move to solidify their defense. Do they have more down the pipeline? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Eagles Latest. I'm your host, Cory Nidoh. Well, yesterday and over the weekend, there's been some news surrounding what the Eagles will do regarding their defense and how they're going to keep some of their young studs on that side of the football. It's about to get really expensive for Howie Roseman and the Eagles to try and retain some of their talented crew that they have. But the first step they made was re-signing Jordan Davis. Now, this was a good move for the Philadelphia Eagles. Davis has really taken some big strides over the last couple of seasons, and especially last year where he really got into shape. He credited the Peloton bike, and he transformed his body, and he has transformed into a young leader in the locker room for the Philadelphia Eagles. And now with his production on the field, he has earned a big-time payday. He's been extended for 3 years at $78 million total, and that also is a historic deal because it includes $65 million guaranteed, and Davis now will be the highest paid nose tackle in the NFL. And the Eagles also get a break because he will still be playing on his fifth-year option at the price tag of just a little under $13 million. So it gives the Eagles more flexibility for the 2026 season. And now he's among one of the highest-paid NFL nose tackles in the NFL by average annual value, joining former teammate Milton Williams in New England. And last spring, he just completely changed his body. That was one of the biggest stories in the training camp. He just looked fantastic. He lost a lot of weight. And Davis has always been a solid run stopper. He has been able to be an early down run clogger, guy that requires offensive lines to double team, and now they're going to look to see if Davis could tap into more of his ability and be more of a disruptor in the passing game as well. Now, if you look at what he's done, he's never played over 600 snaps in a season before. In 2024, he logged 27 tackles, including 1 sack, and then he just continues to get better. And then he had the breakout year last year, leading all NFL interior defensive linemen with 34 run stops, third among D tackles in tackles. He had a career-high 72, trailing only Cameron Hayward and Derek Brown. And then Davis and Jalen Carter also tied for the second most deflected passes at the line of scrimmage with 6 among interior defensive linemen. So this is a good move for the Eagles. I really like how Jordan Davis has been able to bring his physicality to a new level, a better level. He is more fit, he's more athletic, and he's becoming a really good centerpiece in the locker room. You see some social media videos on Twitter from the Eagles. I've had a chance to speak with him in the locker room a couple of times. He's just becoming a mature young athlete that understands his ability. Now, not saying that Jordan Davis was ever immature, but you can see the maturation continuing to improve at a drastic rate, and I think that's a great sign for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a great sign for Jordan Davis, and he is rewarded now with being paid as one of the highest nose tackles in NFL history. So we thought that this was going to be a move that Howie Roseman and the Eagles were going to take care of, but that means that there's still a lot more questions to be answered, including what does that signing mean for Jalen Carter? Now, there was rumors last week that Carter was being shopped around and potentially dangled for a Max Crosby deal. Then reports came out that the Eagles really weren't pursuing Max Crosby, but that report or rumor that came out last week that Carter has been being shopped has been confirmed, and now we'll see what the Eagles are going to do, because I think this could be one of two reasons why they are shopping Jalen Carter. One, it's because of his shoulder issues. He only played 11 games last season. He wasn't himself physically. We all know how dominant of a player Jalen Carter can be when he's on the field. He is a game wrecker. He's a player you typically don't want to trade. However, that could be an issue, and maybe the Eagles and Howie Roseman know that it might be a long-term issue where it's never going to get fully better. Or secondly, he has 2 years left of team control. His value might not be any higher than it is currently. Now, that's tough to swallow because you don't want to lose a player like Jalen Carter, because there's certainly not a defensive tackle in this year's draft class, next year's draft class, that could be the impact player that Jalen Carter has been throughout his career. Now, has he had some issues? Sure. We all remember the season opener against Dallas where he spit at and on Dak Prescott before the first play of the game. Carter has had some issues in the past with some disciplinary issues, but overall, he has an edge to him, and it brings that edge to the defense holistically. But do the Eagles think that he is worth $30 million a year right now at this point with the shoulder injuries and some of the baggage he has? I personally don't think they should trade Jalen Carter. We know Howie Roseman likes to get ahead of the market, so it would make the most sense to try and sign Carter to a new deal sooner than later. However, Carter still has those 2 years of control left. Now, it's not going to be at a cheap cost. He's pushing almost $27 million, I believe, for his fifth-year option year. However, Roseman doesn't necessarily have to do this extension right away, but it would make more sense to do it before the price tag increases on Jalen Carter, because that's what's going to happen. If he comes back with this shoulder injury and he's going to play a full game and a full season, he's not going to have any issues on or off the field, then that tag is just going to skyrocket, and now it's going to be even tougher for the Eagles to try and re-sign Jalen Carter on top of the other defensive players that are due for big contracts in the next couple of years. Most notably, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. We know Quinyon Mitchell's getting locked up. You would like to think that they're going to keep DeJean even though he's a slot corner. We just saw Trent McDuffie get $30 million a year, and he's a slot corner. So the price tag is going to be hefty for those two cornerbacks, to say the least. So I see why the Eagles might be exploring trade offers for Jalen Carter. If I'm the Eagles, I want to be moving him for anything less than 2 first-round picks, just like the Ravens gave up to get Max Crosby, and just like the Cowboys got from Green Bay for Micah Parsons. That is the player that Jalen Carter is. So, again, kind of like the A.J. Brown situation, will there be a team willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Jalen Carter, who needed procedures done on both shoulders, and as I mentioned, and we've seen, can have a bit of a short fuse on the field at times. So we'll see how it shakes out. I don't think that the Jordan Davis signing indicates that the Eagles are definitely moving on from Jalen Carter. I think that they are going to try and potentially keep both of them. However, it's going to be really tough to keep 2 tackles at $30 million a year moving forward. So this is an extremely challenging and tricky offseason for Howie Roseman, and he's going to have to continue to try and navigate through the waters and see what the best moves are for this organization moving forward. Moving on and staying with the defense, the legal tampering period has begun today. Obviously, free agency officially starts on Wednesday, and Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network and the Insider reported that although there hasn't been a decision made, he has been told that there seems to be some good optimism that the Eagles will get a deal done with Jalen Phillips, and he will possibly be back with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Phillips has made it known that he really enjoyed his time with Philadelphia. He said at his locker that he would be quite disappointed if he was not back in that Eagles locker room. He really had a solid second half after being acquired by Philadelphia. He finished with 28 tackles, 2 sacks in 8 games, and called his trade to the Eagles one of the best moments of his life. Again, now Phillips didn't put up the eye-popping sack numbers, but the pressures and the way he was able to disrupt the opposing passing game was certainly noticeable. He put the pressure on quarterbacks 73 times, the 9th best in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus. He played 819 snaps at edge rusher over the entire season while posting a 77.1 pass rush grade, the 20th best in the NFL. Now, it's expected that he's looking to get $20 million per season, and the Eagles seem like that is the focus for Howie Roseman. Now, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN also reported that he never sensed that Philly really was in on Max Crosby, but the Eagles are in on Jalen Phillips. But again, Phillips should have a pretty strong open market, and Phillips also mentioned, hey, I have to take care of my family. His fiance and him are expecting a baby boy soon. So there are certainly other factors that Phillips will have to take into consideration. But I thought Jalen Phillips was a fantastic fit. Obviously, Vic Fangio loves his style of play. Probably the big reason why the Eagles pursued Phillips at the trade deadline last year. And the Eagles made the right move with Phillips. They needed a jolt on defense. Their pass rush was lackluster. They weren't getting the quarterback. Phillips came in and kind of revitalized that aspect of the defense, and he really seemed to enjoy his time playing in Philadelphia. So we'll see if the Eagles are able to land Phillips early once free agency officially starts on Wednesday. Maybe they'll have a deal in place and then just make sure that it gets done and, you know, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and Phillips will be back in Philly for multiple years and can be an anchor piece for this defense. So the Eagles have a lot of questions to answer. Obviously, you got to deal with Moro Ojomo and Jalix Hunt down the line. I mentioned Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell already, and the Eagles are going to have to try and find out the best pieces to move forward with. And they're not going to be able to keep everybody. We already know that Nakobe Dean is most likely gone. Reed Blankenship, I think, is kind of limbo. I think there's a 50-50 chance maybe he comes back. If the market doesn't dictate that he's a $10 million player, I think the Eagles would bring him back below that threshold. And we'll see how everything shakes out, because there is going to be a lot of action this week and moving forward with free agency starting, and the Eagles are certainly one of the most intriguing teams to follow during this time period. So that will just about do it for this episode of Eagles Latest as we kick off the week here on FanArch. Make sure you keep it locked in right here on the channel. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, drop a comment. Who do you want the Eagles to keep? How do you think the Eagles should handle the Jalen Carter situation and what the Eagles should do in free agency? We'll start to look at some more targets around the free agency realm. Again, the Eagles don't seem too focused on making a big splash in that regard, but if they lose Jalen Phillips, if they decide to trade Jalen Carter, well, then they need to somehow figure out ways to fill those voids. So it should be a really fun week to follow along, and the offseason continues. So thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great start to your week, and we'll be back at it tomorrow with more Eagles news and updates here on Eagles Latest.